All right, Warplan players, this is Tim Barrick. I'm the Wargaming Director for Marine Corps University. Thanks for joining me today to walk through this tutorial on Warplan. I'm going to walk through some key points on this, and feel free to uh, jump in with a question at any time. I am recording, but that's fine. You can feel free to jump in if there's a question you have on any topic that I'm covering. Okay, so first, what you're seeing on the screen is the map area, and you see the hexes that have the yellow highlights. This is critically important in the game, as each one of the yellow locations is a victory point location. So this is a contest over these victory point locations, as you can see from the units on the map. And I'll get to the actual game here in a little bit where the resolution is better, but the gray is the Germans, the brown are UK, Canada, and then the green are US units. So the situation starts in July of 1944 for the first scenario that we're going to play in this tournament. And we will start with the Allies essentially bottled up on the Cotentin Peninsula, and just at the onset of Operation Cobra, which was historically their breakout. So the purpose of the game for the Allies is to try to seize as many of these yellow victory point locations as possible. The Germans start the game with 29. The Allies start with 8. And it's a race against the clock, because you can see over here on the left of this slide, you see the number of turns. There's only 7 turns in the game, so this is very quick, fast scenario play. And you can see by the dates, just to help prevent any confusion, if you're wondering where you're at in the turn cycle. Normally when we think of a game turn, we think of both sides playing a game as a turn. When you are receiving your game file for your turn, the way the Slytherin server labels it, they're going to call the Allied first turn is turn 1. The German turn for 30 July is going to be called turn 2. And then the Allied turn for 30 July is turn 3. Okay, so these numbers in parentheses on the right is what the game system is actually going to use for the game turn. So this will help you understand where you're at in terms of how many turns you have left until the end of the game. As you look at the map, you are, as the Allies, trying to seize as many of these objectives as you can. As the Germans, you're trying to prevent the Allies from seizing those, and that's going to drive everything. When you play in the tournament, you're going to be playing 2 games in parallel against a single opponent. So you'll be playing the Germans in one match and the Allies in the other. And then the way the scoring is going to work is the system will add together your points from both matches, and that's going to be your overall score for the match. So that's how the scoring is going to work. For the Allies, you're going to end up with some reinforcements that will arrive on the map in the UK, and then you will have to move them across the English Channel onto the peninsula for reinforcements. For the Germans, a few turns into the game, you'll start getting some reinforcements that will arrive in Germany, and then you'll want to move those towards the front using rail, and I'll cover that here in a bit. All right, so let me shift gears here and jump to the game. I'm going to show you how you're going to get in the game. If you'll note on my desktop, I've got the remote desktop app pinned to my taskbar. I really encourage you to do that. It just allows you to jump in the game so much more quickly. You'll end up clicking on that taskbar, and you'll have a desktop that will appear. Note that my desktop, I have 2 rows of shortcuts. That's because I, as an admin, have access to the development environment. You should see just 1 row with games on it, and what you're looking for is this Warplan icon here for the shortcut. There are other games that we have in the cloud. You're welcome to play these. We're in the process, by the way, today of running a major update to the system. So you may see, if you're trying to get into the cloud later today, you may experience some disruption because we're running a significant patch, particularly in the Hex War system is getting a major update today. Command PE is here as well, and those licenses, though, currently are expired. We should have those updated within the next week. and you're welcome to play any of these other games while you have access to the cloud. But for purposes of this tournament, it's Warplan. Now, you double click it. For those in Marine Corps University, you have CAT card access, and you should be able to get right in without going through an additional authenticator app process. I have kept my account in an authenticator profile, so I did this just before we started, so I had to go through the authenticator app process. I was hoping this was going to make me do it again, but it didn't. So I could walk those of you that are outside the university through the authenticator app access. So if you have any issues getting in, please let us know. But hopefully by now, all of you should be in the cloud. If you're not, please work to do that so you can get in the cloud as soon as possible. All right, so I'm going to show you first when you get your turn notifications when we're playing the tournament, or if you're in a challenge against you're in a practice match against somebody from your team. How you get to play your turn is you hit the multiplayer button here. So you'll click on it. The first time you click on it, these fields here will be blank, and then after you fill in your Slytherin, this is your Slytherin username here, and then your Slytherin password for that account, because the multiplayer scenarios are being played off of the Slytherin server. You need to type that in here. After you do it the first time, it'll stay populated, so you won't have to keep typing it in every time. It's pretty easy. So you just hit login, and this is going to connect you to the Slytherin server. And this is where you'll see where your game turn is going to be waiting for you to play. So when you get into the server, this is what you're going to see. If you have a game pending where you have a turn, it's going to be here in the bottom right. These ones in this top section are open challenges that you can see. Smiling Victory here is waiting for somebody to accept his challenge. If I wanted to play against Smiling Victory, I would click this green box. It's locked, so I would need to have a password from Smiling Victory in order to get into that match. You can see I've got 2 entries here that I've done. Yesterday, I put these up there as a demonstration for the tutorial. I'm going to cancel these 2 challenges. And let's just say I wanted to practice against somebody on my team. I'm going to click over here, the breakout scenario. You click on which side you want to play in that scenario. Let's just say I want to be the Germans. I will type in a password. Let me just type in MCU Fight Club and create a challenge. Okay, and then you're going to see my challenge is now out there for somebody to accept if they had the password. All right. If I want to put another one up as the allies, I simply just hit breakout allies. I could type in the password again to Fight Club and hit create challenge. And now I've got 2 games out there pending. And so if you shared the password with one of your players and said, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm Scarab6, here's the password, go in and accept the challenge, then you can practice amongst your team. Then you're going to see it appear down here where when it's your turn, you'll see a green checkbox waiting for you to click it to play your turn. Any questions on this? All right. And let me go over here to jump into the game. So when you want to play on your own, you can hit new game. And then over here, you pick your side, whether you want to be the Axis, the Allies, or hot seat. If you play the Axis or the Allies, then you're up against the AI. Just know that for the scenarios we're playing, the AI is not optimized for those scenarios, so you're not going to get a very good opponent against the AI. I tend to just go hot seat mode and play both sides if I'm trying to get my own practice round in on my own. So I'm going to click breakout and hit start. And now this is going to load up the scenario. And once it gets in here, I'll give you a quick orientation to what you're looking at on the screen. You're going to have an initial report come up. On the first turn, it's going to give you some of the special rules for the game. For subsequent turns, you're going to see some of the battle reports of what units got lost or special things that happen will be listed here. You can X out of that. Let me just move this out of the way. So when you're looking at the screen, this is the game map. If you want to manipulate the game map, you click on the map with the right mouse button and hold it down, and you can kind of drag the map around, just like you see me doing. Okay, so that's how you manipulate the map. There is a scroll feature that I would actually recommend you turn off. That if you go up here into these gears, this is the options. You're going to see a scroll on off. If you want to have it on, let me just click it on for you. Uh, now when you move to the side of the screen, the map's gonna scroll, and it just sometimes I just find that this just sends the map off in wild directions that I prefer not to do that. I find less control there, so I like to turn the scrolling off. The other thing is you can kill the music here, the sound effects. So I usually put those down to 0. And then the other one you may want to do is details on. So let me show you on the map. Get down to these units. So when you click on one of the units, you see this box right here that's giving you some extra detail about the unit. This is information about the unit here. Here's more details. This box is what that details on is showing you. If you take this off, then when you click on a unit, that box goes away. So I tend to play with the details on, scroll off, and then this is really important right here to understand. So what you're looking at right now on the screen, let's just look at the land unit statistics. Right now, what I'm seeing here is this, like in this British unit, 30 core, 26 strength, and 6. What it's showing here is strength and operations points. So it's 6 operations points with 26 strength. Now, if I click here, you see how the numbers change? Now it's 15 and 17. The 15 is its actual attack value. The 17 is the defense value. And then if I click on this top one, average combat factors and operations points, now you get kind of an average between attack and defense averaged together and how many operations points. Frankly, this is where I usually play the game, is with the combat factors and operations points, but it is very good. I highly recommend that occasionally you click on the strength, because what you'll see is the big units will pop out to you. I mean, like this core right here is at 29 of 30 points. So in combat, you'd have to reduce it a lot to knock it down. Whereas this Panzer division here is only at 6 strength points. So it's really tiny compared to this one. And if it takes very many losses, it's going to get killed. So it is really good from a planning standpoint for you to flip back and forth between the strength, operations points, and then I like this top one of the average combat factor with your operations points. And just keep that in mind to make sure you recognize which one you're on when you're playing the game. On the air side, it's a similar feature where you've got air-to-air, tactical, and operations points are the 3 values that are shown here. And then you've got these operations dots. So air, you usually can take 2 actions with your air units, and that's what these 2 dots are showing here, is there are 2 actions, and if we started to use them, you would see one of those dots go away. And I though tend to either go with just this one, the top one, or the middle, where you can see how many actions you have remaining with your aircraft. So we'll leave it on the middle for right now. Naval units, I'm not going to spend much time on this because none of these scenarios really have a significant naval feature. So I'm going to skip this for now. But this is the map. There's obviously other features here that you could take a look at, but these are the ones I think are most important for you to pay attention to. All right, closing that out. Let's look at the buttons at the top. So if you want to cycle through your units, you can press these arrows and it will cycle through the units in a certain sequence. I usually don't do that. I tend to just, engage the units in the way that I want to and not follow the sequence of the computer. But that's what these do, is cycle through each unit. This undo button usually is not available in the tournament play. Sometimes you might be able to use it, but be careful when you make a move, you may get committed and not be able to take it back. This V button, this is really important. This is highlighting which hexes are the victory point locations. I will almost always, when I open up my game turn, I will click the V button to always be reminded about where the victory point locations are. If you look at this one right here, for example, it's easy to forget. Like if you're looking at the map right here, you're not going to intuitively know that this is a victory point location. And you may make a decision, especially as the Germans, to retreat to the other side of the river. And then you click this later on and find out you just retreated out of an objective, one of the victory point objectives. So I really recommend that one of the first things you do is toggle the victory objectives on, and I would recommend you leave it on unless visually it's getting in the way for you. Um, the next one is going to show you some battles. I don't use this button very often, but it's there. Trade convoys, you don't need to worry about trade convoys in our scenarios. What's important to note about the scenarios that we're playing is that we worked with the game company to craft these specific scenarios that we're going to play over this tournament, where they were narrowing down the scope of the game to a very tactical, high tactical operational problem rather than dealing with the entire European theater and fighting the war on all fronts, which is a pretty heavy lift as a player. If you're taking actions across all of Europe in this game, it does take a while to play your turns. So what we wanted to do is neck that down and just fight specific campaigns. And therefore, some of the features that are part of the core system, we turn off or essentially don't leverage in the span of the game because it's a relatively short
reading
time span.
while we were talking at the end there. I was reading his bio real quick, and
So this is so as we go into this on the units, you've got this button here as well, which turns on or off. So if you want to look at the map, which by the way, you've got these port locations here on the beachheads, that is another place that when you bring units from the UK, you can bring them here or to Cherbourg. But this is a good way to just immediately get rid of the units on the map is clicking that button. Weather will toggle the weather on and off. Most of the weather that you're going to see in this scenario is going to be clear, but when we get to Market Garden, weather will be a significant factor, and you want to make sure that you've got good visibility on the weather. You're going to see enemy action show up on the map each turn. This is how you turn on and off the overlay for what the enemy did, and I'll show you here in a few minutes what that looks like. Supply. You'll see numbers on the map showing the supply level for these hexes, and you'll see the port supply. This is where the supply is coming from. So all of those hexes are generating, these numbers are drawing supply from these ports. And as you can see, as you get further away from the port, the supply level in that hex starts to drop. Headquarters can help compensate for some of that. You'll note this headquarters here, note that right around the headquarters, it jumps back up to a 9. So this supply is coming through the port here. It's at a high level. It gets to the headquarters, and the headquarters is pushing that supply and raising it back up here to those units. That's why the number drops to 8 and then back up to 9. Actually, this is also on a rail. That is actually what's doing that. These, if I click this off, see how these are on a rail line? That's what is causing those to go to 9. But the headquarters, once the Allies break through and you start moving away from these rail lines, and you're cutting across here, you're going to want to use the headquarters is going to help push supplies out to your forward edge units. Okay, so keeping going, the logistics is going to turn on and off the rail lines. The hexes is really the hexes on the map, turning that on and off. I usually like to play with it on. And then control. You'll see how it will change the shading of the hex to show which side has what control. It's really hard to see, though. It's a little bit light on there. But that's the map buttons is what these all show. Let me hit these buttons, then we'll start getting into the units. So this helmet, if this is lit up, then it means you have units waiting to deploy. You click on the helmet. Note there's 2 flags here. The 2nd Polish Armor Division is going to arrive on August 1st. It is currently July 25th, so we're still waiting for this to come. And then you click on the U.S. The first U.S. reinforcements arrive on August 8th. You can see the timeline. Essentially, this is the TIBFED for when these units are coming. And just keep in mind that you have different lists under the different flags here for deployment. And when I start cycling through the turns, we'll we'll do a demonstration of how these arrive. Combat log is giving you a report of what combat has occurred. You get the reports here, and I'll show you this when we start playing the turns. You'll see what happens. War panel. The only thing you really need to see here and pay attention to is here at the bottom. This is giving you the current victory point tally at the bottom of the board here. You don't need to worry about any of this. This is part of the bigger strategic game that we're not playing. Same thing with this. This is advancements in technology investments. If you're playing the big strategic game, this matters. In this game, this does not. You don't need to worry about this at all. So you can skip this. Same thing with convoys. These are already set. You don't need to mess with convoys. That's part of the bigger game, so I'm not going to cover that. This one, though, does matter a bit. So you're looking at your production dashboard here. And what's important to note is your supply, your production stockpile, and oil. Now, in this specific scenario, for the allies, this is not going to matter too much. You should be able to pretty much play your turn without paying much attention to this. But when we get to other scenarios, particularly oil is going to start to matter a lot. Supply trucks is another really important factor, and you get what you get. Okay, you've got 100 for the UK. You click on the United States. The United States goes up to 150. You note the air transports, the sea transports. These all matter, and I'll show you examples of these here in a minute. The UK has one air transport, 60 ship transports. You want to pay attention to this. These are key logistics factors, and I'll explain how these work here in a little bit. Okay. You are not, though, let me just be clear. Down here, this is how you build new units. None of what you're going to do, though, is going to be relevant to this scenario. Okay, the scenario is going to end before you're able to get units built and into play on the map. All right. To include like supply trucks. That's not going to arrive till October. Air Force, you can't build those for the UK. You know, this bottom line is you don't need to worry about production because the scenario doesn't last long enough for production to really come into play. All right, so let's turn the units back on, and then let's get into some of the basics on the unit stats. So let's go in and look at the allies here, and we're going to focus on 30 Corps, which is this unit right here. So this is something that you really need to pay attention to. This is the heart of the game here, is understanding the information displayed up here on the display. What I consider to be the most important is this row right here, where it's showing you the strength of the unit. This is a unit that has 26 points out of 30. Okay, so in combat, when you start seeing the numbers pop up on the map for losses, what's happening is this number, the 26, is getting knocked down. Units are usually at a 10, 20, or 30 core strength. And then this next one with the gears is effectiveness. Really important number here. And you can see that the effectiveness right now, 112% is really strong. It's basically fully ready to do an offensive. And it's going to start to wear down. Every time you move, every time you attack, the effectiveness is going to start to drop. You're wearing down the unit, and this is considerate fatigue, maintenance, wear and tear. It's all of that is baked into this number. You need to carefully manage your units so that you don't exhaust them. You may have a 26 strength unit, but if you take the effectiveness down to 0, it's going to surrender. And you don't want that to happen, or it's going to be very ineffective in combat. So this is a combat multiplier. The lower this is, the worse it's going to fight. So you want to be careful about wearing it down too much. Experience also matters. That's the medals here. He's at a 70% experience level. That is a combat multiplier in the combat adjudication that impacts how much damage they dish out and how much they can take. And then supply level. This is how many turns of supply it essentially has on hand. So if it gets surrounded, it can hold out for 3 turns before supply really starts to become a big factor for it. So these are the most important numbers in the game, frankly, in my opinion, that you want to pay attention to is this row. Now, how can you help as a commander making decisions? How can you help influence what happens in the game? Well, one of the first things you can do is setting the priority on a unit for reinforcements. So you'll note I clicked this button. It is now green. It's at the 3 o'clock position on there, showing that that unit now is a priority for supply reinforcements. So at the end of a turn, when the computer starts to regenerate units, building up their effectiveness, it's going to go through the list of units and supply those with this plus sign first. And when it runs out, it runs out. So it's really important that when you're setting the priority for logistics and recovery, this matters. I will quite often set the armor units as priority. And then if I have an infantry unit that I consider like a main effort, then I would put it as a priority. So you can see here, I've given these 4 units. If I put it on all of these, then the priority doesn't matter, right? I'm basically saying everything's a priority, in which case nothing is a priority. So I recommend, you very judiciously determine which units are your priority units. For the US, these are different, and I'm just going to go ahead and set a couple of these as priority units. Okay. Now, going back to 30 core again, you've got its attack, defense, you got the terrain, you got the supply usage at 26. It's got 6 operations points, and note that it's currently got 2 shovels here, which is showing that it's dug in to an entrenchment level 2. Whenever you put a unit in a hex and you leave it there, it will start to dig in automatically. Okay, you don't have to tell it to dig in. It's going to automatically start to dig in. And it may take a few turns to get up to an entrenchment level 2. So what that means is if you pick up and move, you're going to zero out the entrenchment level. So just be careful. Keep that in mind that if you're trying to juggle units on a front line, the more you keep playing with that front line, you're taking away their opportunity to entrench. So sometimes it's better, even if you have a unit that may not be exactly where you wanted them, if they're there and have been digging in for a couple turns, you may want to leave them there because their entrenchment level is at a 2, which is going to help them survive. Now, specialty points. This is another really important decision that you're going to make. And when you click on this like rank insignia there, you'll see 6 special options that you can essentially give a unit an advanced capability. You only have for the UK 1 unit that you can do this with because it costs 100 points. So let's just say I want, of all my British units here, I want 30 core to be special. And let's just say I know I've got to break through the German lines. So let me give it some heavy artillery, which is going to give a bonus of reducing the enemy's entrenchment by 1. What it does is it's going to take away one of the shovels for the defender. So I'm going to go ahead and click on heavy artillery, add it. You'll note I now have this special badge with the artillery dot symbol on it that shows that 30 core now has heavy artillery with it. And you'll note if I click on another unit, that specialty has gone away, right? You only get to pick 1 British unit for that advanced capability. Now, if I click on the Americans, I have 200 points. That means there's 2 units that I can select on the American side. So let me, excuse me, let me give you an example here of elite, all right? So elite bumps up the experience level of the unit, which is a multiplier for combat, which helps inflict damage and also be more resilient in the defense. So if I want to bump up a unit's experience level, which one do I want to do? Let's just say I want to make my armor divisions better. So as I go through the armor divisions, I note that this is 6th Armor Division. He's at a 50% experience. The 4th Armored is at 54. The 2nd Armored is at 70. So it's really high. It's a 70% and then this is 55. So if I want to increase the experience level to make one of these better, I can either bring, like, let's just say the third armor up to 65%, and then I end up with ones at 65 and ones at 70, or I may decide to take the guy that's at 70 and make him even better. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I'm gonna make him an 80%. And now I know that this second armor division is my best armor division, and you can see from its combat value, its average factors here are a 10, whereas the third is a 6. So he's definitely stronger, and I want to save him for special tasking, right? Now I've got one more specialty point. Let me just go ahead and I'm going to concentrate a breakthrough down here. So I'm going to do another heavy artillery. I'm going to add it to this core. So you can already see I've got kind of a plan shaping up where I'm weighting the effort down here. As I look at the top numbers, all right, this button in the top left is crucially important. So please pay attention to this. If you see this sit with nothing at the 9 o'clock, you see the unit with nothing there, then that means it's a regular defensive posture, which means it will displace when it feels it needs to in order to survive. But if you click this and you see, I like to think of these as dragon's teeth, like from an obstacle belt. You see the three triangles there, and now you see the triangle at the 9 o'clock position. And again, just think of dragon's teeth from obstacle emplacement. You're telling that unit to hold the ground and die in place. Okay, really important because sometimes you may, achieve a breakthrough and you've got a unit that's holding the shoulder of your breakthrough and holding it open. And if you forget to put it in the hold status and there's a counterattack, it may retreat when you wanted it to die in place. So just keep this in mind that this is a really important feature that you want to set your units to hold ground. Make sure they've got the dragon tooth triangle at the 9 o'clock position. And again, it's this button in the top left. This is really important. All right, what does this button do? This, it's got the wrench and the screwdriver and the arrow. So if you want a unit that is out of the fight and you don't want it to be a drain on your supply, you can basically click this and notice it's the opposite of the green priority for reinforcements and supply. You're basically saying that unit will not receive reinforcements. So it's another way to prioritize by deprioritizing deliberately that unit and saying, hey, computer, don't push any reinforcements or supplies to this unit. It doesn't matter to me, right? So that's another feature you can do to help concentrate and push your supplies to your forward units. I honestly don't use that very often unless I'm in one of the larger scenarios. In this scenario, I think there may be a use case for the Germans, but probably for the Allies, you don't need to use this. You have plenty of supply. As you go across here, you've got oil, lots of oil stockpile. Every time you move or attack with an air unit or an armor unit, it's going to burn oil. You have enough here for the Allies that you don't need to worry about it in this scenario. But when we get to Market Garden and Bagration scenarios, this is going to become a factor. These two air transports is telling you that you have the ability to do airborne operations, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. This is a way to set a unit to garrison or active. For the Allies, you could ignore this. Don't use this button for the Allies. You don't need to. For the Germans, this is going to be an important one that will come in, and I'll talk about it when I get to the German turn. Supply trucks. Okay, like I said, your number of supply trucks is going to stay at this level. You're not going to get more, okay? You're going to start burning these over the course of the game. Now, let me go back to 30 core. 30 core was at 112% effectiveness. Watch what happens to that number when I click the supply truck, okay? Two things happened. My supply stockpile locally went from a 3 to a 4, and then I beefed up its effectiveness by 4%, okay? And now you'll note on the unit, it's got this green box in the top right. But because this was a 30 strength unit, it used 3 of the trucks. For every 10 strength points, it's going to use 1 truck. So if I want to beef up this core, I click the truck, It goes up its supply, strengthens it. And this is one way that, like before an offensive, if you want to further build up the stockpiles, you can go through your units and dole out these trucks. Just keep in mind though, once you get to zero, that's it. They're gone. So I'm beefing all these guys up for this offensive. All right. Uh, okay, let's talk about this button here because this is a really important one. You can split some of your units. Now, if your unit is at 10 strength points, notice that that Y is not there, okay? You're not going to be able to split it. But these cores can be split. And I can't split it right here because there's no hex for the division to go to. But watch what happens when I move it here. And now I hit detach a division from this unit. And note how a division popped up here. This now is a 20 strength. It's a 13 of 20. And it kicked out a 10 strength division, right? This is going to become particularly important for the Germans because you can take some of these cores, and if you need to spread out your defenses, you can split these and detach a division. Conversely, you can merge units together if you hold down the Alt button. Let me see if I can do that right here. Alt button, yep. If you hold down the Alt button and then right click with your mouse, you can merge divisions together. So now I just took those 3 infantry divisions, and it has to be like divisions. You don't want to do that with your armor. But now I just took those 3 infantry divisions, merged them into a core. And then if I want to detach them, I can detach them back out. Now note, it did burn operations points by doing that merge and split. I reduced the operations points. Okay, what else do we need to cover here? So I think we've covered rail movement. So let me jump up to the UK and cover rail movement. All right, to move across the channel, you need to start the turn in a port. So I want to move this armor division. Let's move it to a port. Okay, it's there. But now note, I've burned my 10. I've no longer, oh no, I still got 10 more. So let me move this guy to here. Now I should be done. Yep, you see rail is now at 0. So for the Americans, they burn their rail. For the Brits, I'm going to take this. Let me talk briefly about airborne units here for a second. To do an airborne drop, a unit has to be at 100% effectiveness, and it has to be at an airfield. See these airfield symbols? So I want to get this to an airfield because it's currently not at an airfield. So let me move it. Click on the rail button, right click to move. Now it is at this airfield. Note when I moved it, it dropped 5% in effectiveness. So if I want to do an airborne operation, I'm not going to be able to. So I'm going to give it some supply trucks, bringing it to a 99. And then next turn, it should bump up over 100 through the regular resupply. And then I can potentially use it for an airborne operation if I want to. This unit that started in this port, the 83rd Infantry Division. Notice how the ship button is kind of highlighted. I can click on it and it turns into a ship symbol. Okay. Now I can I'm just moving my mouse. I'm not pressing anything. I'm just moving the mouse and I go to Cherbourg. I right click. The ship moves to Cherbourg. And then I click on Cherbourg, I click on the ship, and I want to put him ashore. To put him ashore and disembark, you got to press the blue anchor symbol here. And now it puts him ashore. So that's how you move across the channel. I cannot do that this turn with this airborne unit. See how that button for the transports is not an option? Same thing with this tank. It's not there because I moved them this turn. They're at 0 action points, so I cannot embark them. I'm going to have to wait till next turn. All right, so that covers our uh, our units and what all these numbers mean. Now let's get into the action of a turn. And I need to cover the headquarters as well. So looking at this headquarters, note when I click on the headquarters, all these units around it get this little orange copper flag, right? Units that are within 5 hexes of the headquarters are under the influence of that headquarters. Now, note the British are not. This is an American headquarters, so it can support American units. The British headquarters supports British units. Um, it's doing a number of things. It's able to push supplies to impact the supply level. It also is applying the influence of the general. Now, Miles Dempsey here is the general, and it shows here by the star. He's got a combat of 6, which is a multiplier going into the algorithm that deals with combat. The higher the number, the better. Mobility deals with the mobility of the units and how far they can move, but also affects like retreats and their ability to retreat. And then tenacity impacts like the surrender level of the unit. So I mentioned earlier that if the unit strength and effectiveness was going way down, how long is a unit gonna like fight before it surrenders? If this tenacity is really low, then units are going to surrender earlier in the game. If it's high, then they will be more tenacious and holding out. You can replace generals in the game, like Bernard Montgomery here, 733, but it costs points and you only have one, and it would cost 11 points to bring Montgomery in. So for this scenario, you pretty much have what you have. Don't worry about trying to fire a general and replace him with somebody. If you're playing the campaign game, the larger scenarios, this is really important. When I was first playing the game, I didn't understand this, and I was fighting on the Eastern Front, and I didn't realize I had Guderian, Rommel, and Manstein all on the bench. And then I suddenly discovered that I was making a huge mistake by having them on the bench. So in one fell swoop, I fired a bunch of generals and brought Guderian, Manstein, and Rommel in, and they definitely help. They have high numbers. So don't worry about it replacing them. You pretty much have what you have. You've got Courtney Hodges over here, 655. You got Miles Dempsey over here, 655. They're the same. Okay. Um, but if a unit gets outside of the command radius, the unit can still fight and it can still move, but it's not going to get the headquarters benefit of the general's factors here, and it's not going to get the supply push from the headquarters if it gets beyond range. So usually you want to keep your units within the 5 hex range of your headquarters, though there are exceptions where you may want to extend beyond it. Let me jump up here to this bomb where it says call tactical air offensive. So I don't usually use this, but if you're in a hurry and you don't want to do all the clicking of doing airstrikes, then this is a way to very quickly resolve airstrikes. So let me show you this, how this works. So I'm going to grab this this ground attack group, and anywhere that there's a red hex highlighted, I can do an airstrike. And by right-clicking on that unit, I'm going to right-click here. Notice how it said 0. I didn't knock it down any steps, but there's a red arrow down here. You just move it up. So there's a red arrow down here. So I did impact this unit and reduced its effectiveness. You go back to the unit. Note how the dots, it's got 1 dot left. So I still have 1 action, and these all have 2 actions left. So I still got an action with this one, and I can click on it. Now, notice these 4 buttons over here for air units. This is the target category that you're putting it against. So you can put it against ships, which the Germans don't have any ships in this game, so there's no point for you to click that. You can put it against ground units. You can put it against air units. There is one down here that you could potentially attack, and against strategic bombing to hit the production and try to reduce the production level. That is a tactic or a strategy in the game that you could use. I generally tend to use my air attacking the ground units, or to put them in a counter air or air superiority mode. Now, let's just say this guy here, I want to use him again on ground. So I'm going to hit this Panzer Division again. Now, let me take this fighter. I'm going to put him against air targets. Now, what's important to note is this button in the top left. If it's got the fighter symbol here, then that means it will automatically fly air missions. So I don't have to do anything to this guy. I put him in, bomb airfield mode. I put him in this full support mode with the aircraft. And on the German turn, if the Germans are trying to fly aircraft, it will attempt to intercept those aircraft. You don't have to tell it to. Just by having it configured like this, it will do that. Now, if you change this symbol to the airfield symbol, the computer is not going to fly it. Basically, what you're doing is mission only. That means it's only going to fly when you tell it to fly. You basically exerting manual control where you're only going to expend action points when you want it to expend action points. So just think about that as you go through and set your air posture. I will sometimes have some air units on manual where I control it and it only flies for me. But when you do that, if you have everything set in this mission only mode, then in the opponent's turn, nothing is going to fly. Okay, so keep that in mind. But if I take this American unit, I have it in full support mode and against bomb armies, then in the German player turn, if the Germans attack, it's going to call, the computer will automatically call on that aircraft to come in and fly close air support. And then this guy here, I have him in full support in the air mode, it's going to attempt to do intercepts. So what I've done is I put both of these guys in a posture here where they will essentially try to intercept the Germans during their turn. So that's some of the air decisions you want to think about. How do you want to use your air? Do you want to use it to do airstrikes or counter air? What are you thinking? Now, jumping back to this headquarters with the bomb. When you click this button, it is going to automatically call for all the bombers and basically the ground attack capability to come in and hit every German unit in a 5 hex radius, okay, to the capacity that you have for air missions. So let's click it and watch what happens. Okay, it hit all those units, and those blue shields that came up was how many step losses, and you can see the down arrows for efficiency. But if I go up here now to the air, you'll see that's at a 0, that's at a 0. You can see which ones got expended and which ones did not. All of these ones here are now fully expended. There's no more dots left. But I have my big bombers are here and available. So I can still use these guys and these guys. So this is the value of having the dots. So if you do that tactical offensive, you can look through your air and see what is left to action and how you want to posture it. Okay, so we've done some shaping. Now let's do some ground attacks. I'm going to take 30 core and I want to combine it with this core to attack this division. All right, to get multiple units in the attack, what you do is you hold down the control key, mouse over the adjacent unit, and then right-click on your target. And then that was a very good attack. I knocked him down by 4 strength points. I took some losses, and you can go up here into the battle and see the numbers there where it says 9th Panzer Division, land lost 4, but it's holding. And then the Allies had 2 units in the attack, and I lost a total of 3. Now, note, action point wise, I still have, or operations points, I still have 5 and 5. So I can attack again. So I'm going to mouse over the other core, right click. I'm now at 7-1 odds. By the way, this is going much better than the tutorial I did last night on this. I barely broke through last night, but this was a very successful attack. All right, so now we've beat him up. We still have 4 action points. So now the question is, as I think about how do I exploit this gap that I've created, I can move him all the way up, or I can click on this division, this armor division, and push him through. So now I have decisions to make about how do I want to exploit this. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to push 30 core forward, and then I'm going to set him to hold. I'm going to hold this gap open, right? Now I'm going to grab this other core, push him forward, and I'm going to hold there as well. And then now what I'm going to do is move this guy up and this guy up. Now I've made a little bit of a mistake here in that he's expended. If I wanted to attack this guy from here, I should have brought my armor division because he would have had points. But this corps has action points. I'm at 10-1 odds. I'm probably going to kill this guy. I did. So that division is now killed. And you'll note now I've opened the opportunity to push more guys through. I could attack here at 1-1, but let's look at his efficiency. I'm at 110%. He's actually not bad, but 1-1 odds, I'm not sure I want to take that odds right now. So I'm going to put him in a hold status, and then I'm going to take this armor unit, move him down here, and I'm going to hold the line. I could end up attacking in more locations, but I'm just gonna hold there for purposes of example, okay? And I'm not gonna cover the Americans. Let me now just say, okay, I'm gonna end my turn. When you go through your turn, you hit the checkbox here. End turn, yes. Now it's the Germans. And if I go right here to this report, note down here, it says 9th Panzer Division was destroyed. That's always I always dread in this scenario, being the Germans and seeing how many units got surrendered, overrun, or destroyed. Can be a morale break. Okay, so this button up here that showed you enemy action that highlighted that overlay, I'm going to trigger that and eliminate that so I can see what happened. But this is telling me what my opponent did. I can see that my opponent moved this guy there for some strange reason and attacked these units and attacked through here, and I can see the movements, right? So this is telling me what happened. Now, as the Germans note, none of my units are set to the hold posture. So I need to immediately make some decisions on, do I want these guys to hold? And if I want to hold the line here, I'm going to go through and put these guys in a hold posture. And then note, I've got 200 specialty points. So just like I did with the Americans and the British, I need to set some of these guys with this. Now, no, he's got 82%, so I'm going to give the 10th SS Panzer Division, I'm going to give it the Elite and boost him up some more. I'm also going to make him a priority for supplies. The 2nd Panzer, I'm going to make him a priority. I'm going to give him, I note he's at 100%, but I'm going to give him some trucks, bump him to 104%. I'm going to give this guy some trucks as well. But note, I don't have very many trucks. I got to be very judicious as the Germans on my placement of the trucks. Let me zoom out for a minute as the Germans, as you look at your map, pay attention to all your other units. So, for example, down here, I'm going to move this fighter further east. You've got a Panzer division sitting down here at Angers. So I'm going to move him up. I'm going to take this infantry guy and I will move him up. I'm going to drop him on the rail line, by the way. I've got a headquarters over here, 7th Army. I'm going to move it over. This is actually one I may. Let's look at the headquarters situation for the Germans. This is one that you don't start off in the best situation. So I click on 5th Panzer Army, which is Heinrich Eberbach, and note where the flags are. And then none of these units that are to the southwest of the Allies are covered by the headquarters. My next headquarters is all the way over here, 7th Army, and it is well beyond the 5 hex radius. So I can only move 20 points worth by rail, but I actually think that moving this headquarters is a pretty good option for the Germans. And I'm going to move the headquarters to here by rail. And now note that all these units now are under the command influence of the 7th Army with Paul Hauser. And note he's a 766. He's better numbers than the Allied generals. So I've reinforced the left flank here of the Germans with a headquarters, which is going to help boost the values of these units. I've put the front line in a hold posture to help hold the line. And note that the bocage, I really wish on the screen here it would show you, but there's one more row. If you look down the bottom left here, there's one more row below this that unfortunately my screen is not allowing to be visible that shows you the multiplier for the terrain. So hopefully when you're playing it, you're going to be able to see that. But the bocage is really good for the defense. So as a German player, you're going to find like, hey, you're in this dilemma. The Allies are breaking through. Do you counterattack? Do you pull back? What do you do? But keep in mind that these units, like right here, he's at 2 entrenchment. Watch what happens when I move him back. He's now down to 0, entrenchment none by moving 1 hex. So I moved him back, and if I try to move him back again, he's still at nothing. You can't go back and reoccupy a position. So keep in mind that the decision to do a movement, you're going to lose your entrenchment level. So you got to be really careful about that. But at the same time, if the Allies are breaking through, do you need to, is it time to call a retreat, right? This is the German operational dilemma. Do you fight, tooth and nail to hold the ground? Let's just do a little action here of let me try to pinch off by attacking 30 core. And note it's 1-to-1 odds here. And let me see, do I have as the Germans, I've got some bombers. Let me hit it with an airstrike. Note though, I did lose one in the losses you can see at the top. This is from some of the air intercepts that the Allies did. And there I lost 3. Look at that. Air losses 3. So this hurt me. I didn't do any damage on the ground and I lost a bunch of air. So the air that I put in the counter air mode definitely helped me out on this. But I didn't end up reducing the efficiency. You don't see a down arrow on 30 core. So let me just try and attack here. I combine those 2 units. It's 1-to-1 odds. Look at that. This guy lost 6. Looking at the damage, total land losses were 7 for the Germans. So that was a pretty heavy duty hit. So this just goes back to, hey, what strategy do you want to play as the Germans? Are you going to, have a very aggressive defense where you're doing a bunch of counterattacks and trying to break, this guy? And there I just lost a bunch more. I did reduce him, but now I'm down to a 3 for my values. And let's look at the strength and operations points. So he's at 9, and he's at 15. He's at 18. So the decision making here of where do you want to hold? Do you maneuver your tanks around? Do you reestablish a line? These are all questions. If I want to pull him up, put him in a hold posture, put this guy in a hold, put him as a priority for reinforcements, put this Panzer division in a hold, put him as a priority for reinforcements. And then I have another specialty point. So let me give him tank destroyer, adds to him. And so you can start to see, some of these decisions. Clearly I did not have a plan when I started doing this, and I was just doing things for illustration purposes, and I have a gap right here, right? So this is where you really want to think before you start moving units around, what do you want to do, right? And make sure you don't end up with a gap like this in the end. Okay, one more quick point, and then I think I've covered most everything except for the airborne drop and a few supply points, but and we're also close to noon, so I want to wrap it up here pretty quick. But let me show you this garrison unit. So this symbol here with the mostly white center and the partial X means it's a garrison unit. Now, if you want to convert it from a garrison unit to an active division, then this button up here is what you press. However, to do that, it's going to cost you some production points, and there's not enough save production to convert to normal operations. So what's going on here? How do I convert them to back from garrison to regular division? If you look in your build status, this production level, the Germans are producing 175 production points. There's nothing in the stockpile, and they essentially have everything maxed out to reinforcements and upgrades. So all of this is being burned in upkeep. So if you reduce this down, this number, and I'm just gonna have to keep clicking it all the way down. I'm gonna take this down. So you basically are getting 175 points each turn. Let me drop it to 64. 64 points going to reinforcements. What's going to happen is next turn, I'm going to start to build up a little bit of a stockpile that I can use to activate units. Okay. So I'm just going to X out of this. I'm going to end the turn so we can see what happens when this cycles. Let me see how my airborne unit's doing here. So my airborne's at 100%. Okay. So let's see what happens. If I mouse over France, not over the water, but if I just mouse over France while I'm clicked on that airborne unit, and I go out to, I think it's 15 to 20 hexes is the max range. As soon as you try to go beyond it, you're going to lose your little airborne symbol. But you can see here, I can do an airborne drop with that airborne division because he's at an airfield and he's at 100% effectiveness. So let me drop him here. Note he dropped 76%. He dropped 24% effectiveness just in the airborne drop. Okay. He's at 3 supply level. So in this game, if I don't get to this guy in the next few turns, he's going to die. Okay. Because he's got basically 3 turns till he really starts suffering some attrition. So I know I committed him too early in the game. But once I drop him, note he's got some movement here. I can go in and note I just took a victory point location. Okay, so obviously, historically, the Allies kept their 3 airborne divisions for Market Garden, which is going to be our next scenario that we're going to play. And they did not use them at all during this stage of the operation, and they held them for Market Garden. However, in this scenario, they're yours to employ, and you'd be foolish, frankly, not to use them. So, as the German player, you have to keep in mind that at some point in the game, you're probably going to have 3 Allied airborne divisions dropping somewhere in your rear areas. Okay. So for the Allies, just think about that carefully as you plan what you want to do. You need to posture your airborne divisions accordingly, and then think about the timing and placement of those to give you the best advantage. I have used them in the past when I needed to plug a hole. I really didn't want to use them to plug a hole, but there's sometimes in the game you don't have a choice. You operationally, based on the situation on the ground, you need to use them. Like here around the breakout point. But ideally, that's a deep attack capability that you want to save for the optimal moment. Another important point for the Allies is that you do not have, let me embark a division here and put him at sea. You do not have, note how up on the, right here where it's got landing craft and there's a red 0, you do not have landing craft as the Allies. What that means is you cannot do an amphibious assault. Okay. I know all the Marines are disappointed. You can't do an amphibious assault in this. You don't have a landing craft. They've been shifted elsewhere. So you can only do a port to port movement and disembark. Once you get into the port, then you, just like I said before, you click on it, hit the blue button, and now he is across the channel. Okay. All right, let me cycle to the Germans because there's one more thing I want to show you before we wrap up. All right, so the Germans now. Note what happened with our production. We had 185 points. Last turn, I had set reinforce upgrade to 64. So 64 points are going forward to my units, like the Panzer divisions on the front line. And I'm stockpiling 121, which means I'm starving my front line. Okay, when you play with these numbers, just understand what you're doing is I have throttled back my supply push to my frontline units, and they're getting minimal supply forward. Okay. And I've stockpiled a whole bunch of points here because what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert. You take like this guy here, and what am I showing here? Yeah, average combat factors. So I'm going to convert this division, and now he's an active division. I'm going to convert this guy, and now look at my stockpile. I'm down to 93. Let me do one more. I take this one that's at the up. I convert them. My 93 went to 82. So it cost me 11 points to activate that division. What's important to note now is I'm also increasing the supply demand of my force. The reason that you have all these units for the Germans in this garrison posture is because they only draw 25% of the normal supply level. So understand that the more of these that you convert into operational units, the more you're stretching thin your supplies. And when you click on a unit like this Panzer Division, this supply use number up here, 14, it normally uses 14 points. And so you're at a very low level of supply with those production. You're stretched on supply. So just be very careful about it. You may even, this is a scenario, this is a case where I might even, let me just move him out of the way so you can see him. I might even take like this guy in Paris that's at an 8 and he's at 100%. I may even say, look, just put him in a don't give him anything. He doesn't need it. He's good. He's at 8 strength and he's at 100%. Let's focus all the supply forward to these priority units. So just from a logistic standpoint, I love this decision making in the game because you're really stretched thin on your supplies and you want to manage. So my throughput is good. I've got good numbers. So right now I'm not threatened. But the moment the Allies start to break out, these guys in the West are going to get, I'm going to end up with a tough decision. These guys may get encircled. Okay. I'm a few minutes over and barely covered what I wanted to cover here, but I got through the majority of it. So let me pause there and see if anybody has any questions, something that's not clear that you would like me to clarify further.
Yeah, the uh, mail points, like you use those to headquarters, you replenish every 20 rail game.
Yeah, Corbin, you came in broken there. Can you try again?
Or do they replenish turn, or is that for the game?
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're coming in really broken, but I think you were asking about the headquarters and replenishment. I didn't fully catch the question because you came in garbled, but um, I the production points you produce this number here. So the 185 gets produced every turn. Okay. So the upkeep is what's going forward to your units. And so you really do want to try to maximize this. Ideally, you would have 185 points. Um, you would want to probably maximize this to where you're pushing all of this to your units, all available. But if you have this other intention, you want to use them for of like converting units, you're going to have to manually manipulate that over a few turns. Just pay attention to it. I was really hoping this would not be a feature in this scenario, but I find that it is an important factor in this, garrisoning of units or shifting them to active and managing those supply stockpiles. So, but you do get this number every turn, and then trying to get your stockpile up, you need to have production points in a stockpile in order to be able to convert units over. Hopefully that answered your question. Let me check the chat out too. Other Okay, 20, yes. Okay, I'm sorry. Rail points is what you were asking about. So the rail points do regenerate every turn. Rail, the transport points, all those kind of strategic movement points do regenerate each turn. Other questions?
Hey, sir. For the entrenchment points, do those directly translate like 1-to-1 for defense? How do those translate?
Which points?
The entrenchment
Shovel.
or the
No,
shovel?
yeah, the shovels. I believe that those are not a direct one for one. Unfortunately, the rule book does not cover the exact algorithm that they use. in adjudicating the combat. I'd have to dive back into the rule book. I believe that in the player aids there may be a number there on what the modifier is associated with that entrenchment level. I'll go back and take a look at that and see if I can find exactly what it is. But I'm assuming it's at least a 10 or 20% modifier for each entrenchment level.
Awesome, thank you. And then also, Mr. Barrick, where can we find like the scenario information for length, how many VPs are considered what sort of victory, and so on?
Yeah, I'll push the breakpoint scenario out today. The Market Garden one, I'm putting some finer touches on the Market Garden game book scenario. I'll try to have that out by the end of the week.
Awesome, thank you. You're a hero for doing all this. Appreciate you.
Thanks. Yeah, I love this game. I think Warplan is definitely, of all the games we have, it's one of my favorites. I love the operational level decision making, and especially the nuance between the generals, the supply levels, the efficiency of units, the weather factors. When we get to weather, you're going to find that, snow and, there's right now you see the single raindrops. There's the dreaded double raindrops that will appear that essentially turn things to mud. And it's really difficult to move and fight in the double rain. So there's just so many factors that are nuanced in this that I really enjoy playing this scenario, because you can really weight a main effort in how you manage your forces. And what's important to note too, when you play your turn, don't do like I've done in the past and get super excited about jumping right in and fighting. You definitely want to take a moment to orient on the situation and figure out, okay, what happened? What's going on? What do I want to do? Right. And then, like in the case of the allies here, you might be tempted, especially if there's, like you see this 3-strength core right here, and you've got it surrounded on 3 sides. And if you click on the odds, we're in the German turn. Let me jump over to the allies real quick. If I jump in and I see, hey, I've got this situation right here, let me just crush this guy, and I put all my guys, I got 5-to-1 odds, and I might be tempted. Hey, 5-to-1 is great. Let me jump in and do that. I would just say pause before you do anything. And I tend to try to discipline myself I will first go up here to the helmet and go, do I have any forces that need to come on the map, right? And the answer is yes. I got this Polish Armor Division, so let me deploy it. I click deploy. I get the green areas, so I left click and it goes into this port. Let me see the Americans. The Americans have the French. I put it in that port. Okay, now I've done my deployments. There's no more units to deploy. I've done that. Now let me look at my supply status. Do I want to use my supply trucks? And do I need to change my priority units for who's getting priority supply? So I'll kind of take stock of my logistics, and maybe I want to give this guy a supply truck push. He's at 104, but he's right at the front lines. So let me keep him at a high level of efficiency. So I plus him up. And 30 core is at 84%. Let me beef him up, bring him back up to 88. So I like to do the logistics shaping. Then I go to air. And what do I want to do with my air? And I'll go through and employ my air. And then if I want to do strikes, I need to really think about, okay, if I have 10 airstrikes, what do I want to hit, right? And so I would think about, okay, on the maneuver side, what do I want to accomplish this turn? What's my priority effort? And then I would use my air accordingly, just like you would in any real world operation for prioritizing it. So bottom line, come up with a plan. Don't just react. Don't just say, oh, this unit here I got 5-to-1 odds. Let me hit them. Because you're going to burn the operations points, and you may decide that going east is what you want to do, and you don't care about that guy. So just bottom line, don't just react. Come into the scenario and orient on it first, then decide, and then go through and do your combat actions after you've placed your reinforcements, after you've done your logistics survey, after you've postured your air and done airstrikes. then go through and do your ground maneuver and attack. So you really will benefit by having a disciplined approach and not just jumping in and starting to move stuff. So have a plan, or you're going to end up doing something that you regret. All right. Any other questions?
I got one, sir. I feel like I might be missing something here because a large amount of these infantry units have very low defense, and the only thing that has somewhat decent is armor. How exactly would you make use of the fact that seems to be the only decent defense? I thought armor would be an offensive unit, but it seems to me to be the only decent defensive unit.
All right. So let me go into attack defense. So you may have been looking at the operation point value. Okay. So if you look at what are the numbers representing, right? I go back to your options. They can show different types of things. So if you do attack defense, now you see that these infantry are pretty good in the defense, these infantry corps. That's what the two numbers are showing you. If I go back to the combat factors and operations points, the second number that you're looking at is not a defense number like many games tend to show. The second number is how many actions you can take in that turn. Any other questions?
Thank you, sir. That clarifies that.
Okay, I will hang out. If anybody has any follow-on questions that you would like to hit me up on, I'll hang out and be here to answer questions. And I'm going to stop recording, and I'll post this later on.